we all know geometry. We all spent a year studying it. We can't. It's like we all really know. We all have an idea of what we think geometry is, and this preamble, this one source that we got in the entire year, this one source, you guys are clinging to it so hard, and just because it lists points, lines, and planes together, you're saying that you're using that as the basis for your argument. But we all know lines are made of points. We all know that planes are made of points. We all know that everything in geometry, even space, is made of points. So forget the preamble. Just think of what you know. Think of what you learned. That is my final plea. Please.
Hey, Zane, are you going to change your mind? Would you come up and make your final plea? Sorry, but
Oh gosh. Okay, so does my final plea reputations or bubbles? Okay. So first of all, I think the chemistry example is kind of incomparable because they're not good. Like you can't make the atoms congruent to points and then liquid congruent to lines because what we're saying is that lines and planes are used just as much as a point A or a point B. So we're going to use point A in a proof, and we're going to use line A in a proof, and we're going to use plane A in a proof, right? But anyways, my final plea is basically that I agree with you, first of all, that this could be redundant, right? My final plea is that because of the way logic works and because of the way argumentation works, we have to use these three because the preamble is what we're given, and your argument can be used for amending the preamble, which we can do if you want to. But yeah, that's all I think. I think it's that that's the preamble's already given to us. We have to use it. That's just the way logic works, the way arguments work.
okay, this argument is not closed.
Sorry.
Okay, I want to summarize some things. Okay. Good debate, good discussion. Teachers, do you agree? Good discussion?
Absolutely. Excellent.
Excellent. Okay, it turns out that this is actually the third time that this question's been debated. The first time it was with the teacher leaders. Raise your hand if you were part of that discussion. We met on, what day was it, Friday? We had the same discussion because we wanted to test this question, see if it was a good question. Okay? We did this question the second time this morning with the teacher participants, the teachers who are, I guess, being trained or attending this conference. Okay, raise your hand if you were in that group. Okay, that's the majority of the teachers. Okay? And this is the third time we should you guys here. The discussion was different in each case. Okay? The first time it came up in the teacher leaders group, the argument as to whether it's points or points, lines, and planes was a vital part of our discussion. It was pretty much myself and I think Michael. I think me and Michael actually disagreed. I, for the most part, agreed with John that it should just be points because lines and planes, I actually agree with John, that lines and planes, since they're subsets of space, geometry is really the study of points, and the lines and planes are like some of those things that you study when studying points, okay? And I also agree with his argument that the preamble itself is not what geometry is. That's what I was trying to point out, that what is geometry is not the same question as what does this preamble say. Those are two different questions. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, so just background, so I more agree with John on that point. That's not to say everyone else is wrong, because I was actually in the minority in that group as well. I think as a teacher's group, we came to the consensus. Let me read you what the answer is according to, this is only according to the teacher's group's opinion. And I think the teachers for the most part agreed this morning, right? Okay, the answer that the teachers came up with is geometry is the branch of mathematics concerned with the abstract ideas of points, lines, and planes. It's concerned with, not the study of, it's concerned with the abstract ideas of points, lines, and planes that was developed in order to understand and describe the relations and properties of the objects of space. Okay, so that's where the whole idea of space comes in. In the teacher group this morning, the discussion was not so much about points, lines, and planes versus points, because the teachers all agreed. It never even came up. They were on complete consensus that it's points, lines, and planes. Not a single person even brought up the issue, well, it's just points. So it's interesting that different groups had different points of discussion. The part that they were debating more was whether or not to include the last part about it describing objects in space as opposed to only being the study of points, lines, and planes. Okay? Okay, so to make a long story short, what we're saying is that the things you guys talked about were the same things that the other groups also talked about, which is no wonder why it's difficult to come to consensus on a question like this, because even adults, teachers, math teachers, still disagree and still are discussing the same type of things. Okay, did you learn something today?
Yes.
What did you learn? Let's talk about it. I want to have 5 or 6 people share what you learned.
I learned that.
Stand up, John. If you could please stand up to share with us what you learned.
I kind of like realized it was like this revelation that in geometry we always kind of had this set truth where everyone was either right or wrong, and there was always an answer at the end of it. But today I kind of learned that like people are always going to disagree no matter what, and there is no set answer to this question. No one's right, no one's wrong. It's kind of like sad. That's what I learned.
Well, I mean, with Zaina's point about efficiency, I never really considered that in geometry. I always thought that, either it could be one way or the other, like, right or wrong. But I never really thought about intermediate kind of thing where it would be either quicker to go one way or another. I never really considered it that way. So I thought that was pretty new to look at. Efficiency and understanding and universal understanding. I never really thought much about that.
Also going off of what Jonathan and John said, John, you said that everybody agrees or will always disagree about something. There are also a lot of very, very stubborn people that no matter what, not always no matter what, but you need a lot of proving and background information to prove your point, to change their mind. Like Zaina, I'm pretty sure you're stuck on points, lines, and planes for the answer.
I mean, I'm stuck on that considering the rules of argumentation.
Yeah, and I'm also going based off of that. Like I'm in my own mind, I'm sure that it's points, lines, and planes. I think points is not deep enough to actually define what we actually discuss and think about in geometry. And then I also you made some comment about logic, and everybody needs and logic and argumentation. Everybody needs to have the same mindset to have an actual argument.
That's exactly what John was talking about. No one's ever going to fully agree on something. So essentially, there are no truths. But we can go by majority, I guess. The majority of people are accepting the preamble. But
Can I speak again?
Of course, yeah.
Based on what I was saying earlier, the reason I'm so depressed now is because the world is so full of turmoil and all this ambiguity, and I thought that math was like the one place I could go to just be like security, it's black and white, and everyone agrees. Everyone agrees that 2 + 2 is 4, right? But this, I mean, which is like even the fundamentals of math, people just
Does anybody want to address that, teachers? Anybody?
Address what?
Go ahead. Address John's statement. Go ahead.
Well, I would say that although there is ambiguity and there was disagreement with, sounds like all 3 of the groups that were involved in this conversation, that the obtainment of an answer or not was not really the richness of what happened. It was the conversations that happened between the individuals in the room, and whether we agree perfectly on all the wording, the learning that happened in this room and in the other groups, that's where the goal is.
I just wanted to share, we had talked about this at the end of our process, but in terms of talking about a destination opposed to the journey, and it was just powerful for me to watch the journey opposed to where we're going to go, because that's my question for humanity sometimes, is where are we going? We have technology, we have this educational process that we're creating we're developing some of the brightest minds on the planet, but where is all of this going? And that's an answer we may not know, but in the process of going through the journey, we develop more as human beings, and basically, where we end up is where we're supposed to be. I just wanted to share that. It was powerful.
One of the things that caught me by surprise was, and this was the difference between the teacher group and the student group, is you guys actually reached an issue where you could not find a bridge between the new ideas. That was the only reason why the teacher group got to a bridge, is we actually spent an hour and a half debating one issue that two groups were having, but we actually could come to a consensus on our issue. Yours was one strictly that there wasn't really a consensus to be reached, and so you were stuck there for almost the entire time. It was kind of an interesting thing to see between the two classes.
I was trying to find a bridge.
And who knows, maybe there was a bridge, but, and then just to throw one more little hamper in for John's world, 2 plus 2 could also equal 0 depending on what mod you're using.
Two more comments and we'll stop on here. Agnes and Mike, and then we're done, okay?
I just also wanted to help you with don't be depressed, because this happened already in geometry. If you think about the fifth postulate, the parallel postulate, you can decide, do you want to keep it or you want to build geometry without it? And if you want to build without it, what else do you want to replace it with? And then you will be in a different world, but it can still be a beautiful, useful structure. So I think here the debate was many times you wanted to be such a minimalist that you don't want to accept too many things. And there is such a thing in geometry too, they call it general geometry. You can build many things in geometry without going one way or the other or making up your mind about it. But I heard that in this conversation, that many people wanted to keep whatever you want to build here as one kind of game. And it's like the difference of playing chess or Chinese checker or poker. They are all games, they all have objects, but how do you play it? It will be a totally different game. So don't be disappointed with it.
Do you understand that? Yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. As far as you're concerned, you're absolutely right. You're right on. And I agree with you. So we're in consensus. We just have to convince everybody else. So this debate's not done. See how it works? Okay, Mike?
I was also concerned that you were depressed about the turmoil in the world. And although I disagree with you on the definition of geometry, it is a definition. So the way that we define things makes things either be, you said black or white, right or wrong. Like the way we define that this is a cell phone. So there are some things that are fundamental truths. If you're concerned about that, I mean, if you drive 100 miles an hour and get in a car accident and you're decapitated, you're dead. I mean, those are things that are, to use a kind of a brutal example, but there are things that are true and things that are not true in this world. So, but what you can control, and this is almost like a theological discussion or a philosophical discussion other than mathematics. The things that you can control with your behavior are really what matters in the world. So there are not always black and whites as far as when we look at politics or rhetoric, but there are things that you know that your conscience can guide you into being right or wrong, and how you want to pursue your career, how you want to go forward in your life. So it becomes a matter of not following the heart, following the conscience, right or wrong.
Okay, Doug, any question?
Yeah, quick question for you. Is your geometry like everybody else's geometry? No.
I asked you that once.
I probably didn't answer it.
It's a dark
What's your point?
My point is to kind of play an instrument for Jones here real quick, is that the whole reason why we're all here is because he was willing to argue that point that nobody else was willing to argue. That's part of how we all got here. It's how we got to the point where there's debate inside a classroom. And geometry style is different using origami as a basis in its original foundations versus strictly just the axioms. And so all of that that willingness to be able to argue that point when everybody else is dissenting from you ends up being a strength towards the end.
Okay.
And who gets to decide what's right?
You.
That's the thing. What if this classroom decides that what John said is right, and another classroom decides something else, and another classroom decides pi is what geometry is? It just doesn't make sense. I feel like there should be some.
Right, but is the goal to be right, or is the goal to
Use critical thinking.
use critical thinking, debate, and to really justify your position? We have to move on. Okay.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we just discussed there's really not always a black and white for everything. There is a gray area in some places.
Let's move on. We can talk more anytime. Let's do it. We'll finish this session. Okay, so on behalf of all the teachers, we want to thank the students for Okay, so thank you. We're done. I guess I'll see you guys later. You want to talk a little bit outside before we go? Oh, come on, yeah.
It's wonderful to see you guys come here and argue about your point and so on. When I think about in a classroom, after you guys finished already the math classes and move away, and when he asked you to come here, you came here because there's some kind of a passion for the math and this argument, right? So if we can generate that argument with the kids, we have, whether you agree with or something or not, we have achieved quite a lot in that process. So I'm so happy to see you are interested in math and thinking about arguing, and thank you for coming in this Saturday to the campus and being part of this one. I think all of us learned a lot through that process. Thank you very much.
So we have.